Hi, everyone. Welcome. So glad you're here. As you come in, if you could just put in the chat where you're coming from, that's always fun. And welcome, panelists.
Woohoo, Denver. I'm Fort Collins.
hmm
Okay.
Well, I'll say that I'm coming to you from DC, but I just got back from Ireland. So if I look a little it's because I'm a little just a tad jet lagged.
That's so cool. What were you there for? Holiday or book stuff or
Just fun. I had been there before and had gone around, but my mom wanted to go, so I was like, "Sure, let's do it."
Where did
So we
you go?
did.
We were just there in June. I had
R-
never been, so we
Really?
really loved it. Yeah.
Oh, someone today in Ireland said the days in Ireland that are beautiful are just unmatched, but they're
Yes.
rare. And I was like, that's so true because the days that you get that are sunny, the contrast with the green and the blue is just, oh, so beautiful. But then it just
Yes.
rains and rains and rains outside of that. Before I had gone all around, like we did the whole Emerald Isle, the Ring of
Yeah.
Kerry, everything. But this time, we went to Dublin and then kind of like made our way to different places from there. So
Okay.
it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
We flew into Shannon, so we were kind of like in the western part. So we went to the cliffs and all of that, and it was really nice. We were just there for 2 days. We were actually like we went to see Beyonce, so we flew into Dublin and then like flew to London for the concert. So we were there just for 2 days, but really, truly, I was in London to see my president.
I mean, if ever there were a reason, that sounds like a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, hilariously, the first day when we went to the sorry, I have a window open, but when we went to the cliffs, it was so foggy you couldn't really see. And so
Mm,
my mom was like, my mom still lives in the Caribbean, so she came to DC and then together we went to Ireland. So she was like, I did not come thousands of miles to not see the cliff. So we literally drove there on our last day in Ireland. We drove all the way back from Dublin to see
wow.
the cliffs. And we did see them, so it was worth it.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah, I
awesome
mean,
though.
they're pretty amazing.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just stunning. Yeah.
We had a nice clear day. So we were
Oh,
like in the 2 days we were there was like nice and sunny. Which is
oh.
like, oh, we should move here. And everybody's like, it rains most of the
Mm.
year. Don't let this sunny weather just fool you.
You got lucky. Oh man. Okay, we got a lot of folks from DC, folks from Michigan. Okay, as folks are still coming in, I do want to, be respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Hi, I'm Destiny. I'm the book club coordinator at City Bookshop, and I'm so happy to welcome our amazing panel tonight. This is going to be so great. Just an FYI, if you have questions for the authors, you can put them in the Q&A. But if you're just trying to show your agreement, your adulation, your fun, you can put that in the chat. So just make sure you put questions. We will have an opportunity for audience questions. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our authors and then throw out my first few questions. So we have Adriana Herrera, who was born and raised in the Caribbean, but for the last 15 years has let her job and her spouse take her all over the world, i.e., Ireland.
Oh,
Uh, she loves writing stories about people who look and sound like her people, getting unapologetic happy endings. Huge round of applause, virtual round of applause for Adriana. We have Amalie Howard, who is a USA Today and Publishers Weekly best-selling novelist of smart, sexy, deliciously feminist romance, a la Sarah McLean. An AAPI and Caribbean-born writer, she is also the author of several critically acclaimed, award-winning young adult novels. Most recently, Queen Bee through Joy Revolution, which is just such a great novel. I loved it so much. I
Thank
ate it
you,
up.
Destiny.
I really did. So huge round of applause for Amalie. Yay. Then we have JJ McAvoy, who has written numerous independently published novels. Her books have been translated into 6 languages and are bestsellers in Turkey, Israel, and France. She is active and delightful on social media. Huge round of applause for JJ. And last but not least, our lady of the hour, Erica Ridley, is a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of historical romance novels. And when not reading or writing romance, Erica can be found riding camels in Africa, ziplining through the rainforests in Costa Rica, or getting hopelessly lost in the middle of Budapest. I'm trying to get on her level. Everybody, huge round of applause for the lady of the week, Erica Ridley. All right, welcome, welcome. So, first question I have is for you, Erica, and it's congratulations on your first book, but also, what are you excited about that's specific to this book for readers to be able to engage with?
So one thing I really love about this series is that there's capers, there's heists, shenanigans in every one of the books, and it is so fun for me personally. It's a trope that I absolutely love. Any movie or TV show with a heist, I'm so there. And so it has been a lot of fun to bring that to Regency England, which does not usually have heists. And also, if you're new to the series, there is just a very tight, diverse found family, and I love that as well, and the dynamic that the characters have.
We love the Wild Winchesters.
So much fun. I was re-listening to it on the plane, and I was like, first of all, this narrator is fire. I'm not really familiar with Moira Quirk, but I was like, yes, this is great. So it was a lot of fun. Okay, so for the panel, I want to know what it's like to do research as you look for details for specific communities, for people of color, queer people, people with disabilities. How do you really find the historical record when it really didn't spotlight those communities?
I can
And
go.
we can start with anyone. Yes.
So, it depends. I think it depends on how accurate you're trying to be with your storytelling and how deeply you want to look into like keeping it accurate, because unfortunately sometimes if you do, it kind of becomes sad, and that's not the why we're here. So I do think like there is a lot of researching, but I feel like once you start, you also end up, I don't know for anyone else, but I know I get off in rabbit holes all the time just looking at stuff. I mean, I think there were times where I would just be looking at, like, I wanted to find out what type of carriage or wood was used for a carriage, and I would just be sitting there looking at wheels from like from the 1813s for like just in, not because, and it's because it's very interesting and so you're learning also, but I do feel like it all depends on what you're trying to say. But I feel like most often than not you just gain a lot of trivia knowledge about the Regency period or just any historical period.
So, JJ, what is your favorite kind of wheel?
I,
And what wood is it made out of?
I think I found one that was made out of old cider wood, and I like really, really expensive. And I was trying to, it was just a tangent. I was just gone for a good like couple hours on wheels. But yeah, so that happens. I don't know how that happens for everyone else, if they or if you just spend time looking at like estates and thinking those are pretty. Those you can get really lost in it. But I feel like when it comes to researching, I think it all depends on what the authors want to say and how realistic they want it to be. Because I do think that in romance, we do want it to be a comfortable space for a lot of people reading. And so I think there's a lot of stuff history tells you, but then sometimes the things that are there that are kept in like the history books are not always the most fun things to read.
I think we live in a time where there's a lot of accessibility, especially to look back and find different types of research. And for me, writing, people of color into my stories, especially with intersectionality, for example, like, queer people of color, for example, I came upon Catherine Duleep Singh, who was a Sikh princess in Queen Victoria's court, and she was a brown woman and also a lesbian who lived with her partner until she died. So I think, we're also asking different questions now of who existed, how we lived, and whether they were like, people who fell in love. There were people who looked like us who fell in love every day, even back then. So, I mean, looking up those questions and getting answers now because we're asking different questions, I like doing my research like that, So like in my series, one of my series, I actually put in my author's note, I know most of us do that, like, who my story was inspired by and what they did and who they were. And hopefully that gives some insight into, people of color who did exist in those times and fell in love in those times and lived lives in the full lives in those times, in the aristocracy.
I try to find as much contemporaneous stuff as I can when possible. It isn't always possible. But to Amalie's point, I have noticed lately that, like in museums, I was just in London recently, and I saw that several museums are definitely making a point to try and be more, not only more inclusive, but more honest. And they're changing the descriptions of different things. And instead of, Lord so and so, it's like slave owner, blah, 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 like just straight out giving the context of like who this person was and what the real world was like there. So I do feel it's easier than it was before to find information on certain demographics, but not all. Like in some cases, I do have to kind of extrapolate, like particularly if it's, say, a disability or something like that that wasn't really documented in this time frame. Then I look to people that I know or that I can talk to now, and what are the difficulties that they have, and then with what I know about the time period, just try and do the best you can with blending the two.
Yeah. I mean, I found actually like my experience has been that the more I research, like the more fascinating and enlightening and amazing things I discover. Like I think part of it is, to me, like I have the sense like a lot of what's documented is stuff that is like referring to like our trauma, but like the more like I dig into like specific areas of like a time, a place, I find like there's so much more that like we just like didn't know because it's not part of like the larger narrative. Like as I was doing research for Island Princess, which is two lesbians in Paris in 1889, both of them Latinas, like I found like the lesbian community in Paris at the time was extremely vibrant and open. It wasn't illegal to be a woman who was in a relationship with a woman, so it was pretty open. Like I wouldn't say that they were like having tea at the Queen's house, being openly a couple, but they could be friends and having tea at the Queen's house. So it was very like, and so like there were a lot of lesbian bars and like a lot of gay bars, so it was very different than like this image that we have of like queer people just being like in like very hard situations, although it was not like by any means like great all the time, but there's a ton of homophobia now. So I think like for me, it's like I'm trying to like, I try to kind of like just focus on those things that I find that are positive and then like shed light on like, of course, like all like the struggles as well. But I mean, I think I come in intentionally to like put into the text like history of the Caribbean, at least like, the Spanish Caribbean, which is where I'm from. And so like I try to like really intentionally kind of like focus on those pockets of people in that time and how we could have existed. And like I try to find places that I know we were there, like the World's Fair in 1889. It's like very documented that Latin America had a big presence at that World's Fair. There were over 7,000 Latin people just as exhibitors, in addition to like the 32 million people that came to Paris that year for the fair. So like, why not a Ramirez and an artist and a doctor trying to do radical things with her other like doctor friends?
Yeah, it's basically like a launching point, essentially. Yeah. Okay, so to the panel as well, I'm to steam or not to steam, spice, whatever you want to call it. I think you all have different approaches to portraying intimacy in your book. So I was wondering what that process is like for you. How you decide, like in your stories, what to include when. Yeah, you could take it away.
I was telling Erica, we were like at we were in Rare together, and my husband was my assistant, and he kept telling everybody that he was my cover model. And I'm like, dude, you are so not. Calm down. But I mean, speaking of like, writing those scenes, it's just I think it just has for me, it has to be a balance of sex and emotional connection. I feel like for me, I like the balance of both. I mean, I do like a really good sexy scene, and it depends on the book that I'm writing, but I really like the angst and the burn of like that emotional tension. Um, so for me, like I just, that's where I kind of try to balance those two things and make sure that it's it moves the plot along. It's part of the story, and it's not just there for gratuitous like fun. It's like a naughty subject. I feel like I went first so I can get it out of the
No,
way.
go
So
for it. Anybody in this chat is here for this. So
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say I think it very much just depends on like what the book requires and what the book is saying, and like sometimes it happens very very quickly in like the beginning scenes of a book, or it can come late. I just feel like it depends on the plot. Sometimes you just feel it like this is where it should go. For me especially, there's some books that have more and there's some books that have less, and I've written books that are full of them, and then I've written books that just only had one. I feel like it's very much depending on the characters and how they have a connection. I mean, there's only so many pages you can write to make like a plot, and then have like if there's a venture, all these other things, it's like they don't really have time to give you that full explosive scenes that you have like in every couple of chapters. But I just feel like it very much depends on what your characters are and how they are connecting to each other, because you really want it to feel genuine when they do engage in that activity.
Yeah. I would say for mine, generally there are, one or two sex scenes in every book, and typically in the second half of the book, because usually there's more of a slow burn, I guess, in the beginning. There's usually, interaction and banter and everything up front, but they have to kind of earn it to get there to the sex scene. And I do want, like to Amelie's point, like that emotional connection or sometimes plot based. I mean, sometimes it is just about chemistry, right? So it just kind of depends there, but definitely true to the characters.
I basically write romance so I can write sex scenes. I don't know. Like I write high heat. I love reading high heat. Like you have to write what you love. And I like high heat romance. So usually my books are high heat. And it doesn't mean that there's it's starting from like chapter one. Although if I can squeeze it into chapter one, I will. But mostly it kind of like whatever the story requires. But usually once that's happened once, like I'm going to like pack it in there as much as possible and try, of course, to like it has to be like what I try to do is kind of like let it like be part of like the development of the romantic arc. And sometimes like I just have them do it so that I can like torture them right after. But I do write high heat. I love writing sexy scenes. It's
so
my
so what
favorite day
you're
of
saying
the process.
what you're saying is if we ever read a book where it's closed door or pretty tame, we know that someone has snatched your body up.
I've been body snatched. Yes, yes. I have been taken. Please call the police. I've been kidnapped. Someone's impersonating me.
You heard it here first, people. And also, don't forget to put questions in the Q&A because I will be pulling from that. Okay, so something I always think about historical romances is how much wit there is. So, for example, in your book, Erica, there's a line where one of the characters is like, "Are you summoning Poseidon?" And I was cackling. Like, it was just the funniest thing. So, I'm just wondering how you all approach that because I have yet to read a historical where there isn't some amount of true wit.
I personally just have fun with it. Like I am often also cackling as I'm writing, and I just try to have fun. Like the banter part, it's more of like a flow state for me. Like I'm not really thinking about the dialogue. I'm just like typing it as I'm hearing it in my head and just having as much fun as possible.
So again, you're a cyborg because the most comedic cyborg ever. Because what?
I, I just want to say, I think when it comes to writing witty dialogue, you should be reading a lot of witty dialogue.
Yes.
And I think, especially, I've read all of the ladies here, I've read at least one of their books. And like, I think at some point, when you read someone else who does witty dialogue well, you learn from that person. And it also makes you become funnier because your humor is expanding. And so I feel like the reason why there's so much witty banter in like historical genre is because we have been reading each other's books, and so we know that we all like find this element funny, and so we are all kind of not so copying, but we're all inspired to do the same type of thing. So like I just remember when I was reading Queen Bee, I was laughing throughout that whole entire, I was just like, why didn't I write this? This is like, that was my kind of thought process as I was going through. And I was like, why didn't I want to be that funny. And so I think that at different, like, just read more, buy more books. That's
She
what I'm
says
telling
this
you.
after I'm like this super fan for Ruthless People. And I'm like, oh my God, I need more of this couple because
Yeah,
they're ridiculous.
here's my pitch for you all to buy more books. You'll become writers. Buy all of our books, and that's, you'll learn everything you need to know.
I feel like in my banter, I'm a smartass. Like in my head, like sometimes I'll be like, this is what I should have said then, back then. I mean, I'll give you a quick story. When my husband and I met, I'm going to put this in a book one day. He was, staring, and we were over a pool table and with a bunch of friends at this lounge in New York City. And he basically was just looking. And I was like, if you're going to stare so long, you might as well come over and introduce yourself. And I was like, dang, I can't believe I said that because it sounded so cool. And I was like, very not cool. But, I mean, like banter, I love reading banter. I think also the beauty of banter in historical romance is that it's also a way for the women to kind of step beyond the restrictions that were placed on them. So, like, when they're kind of sassing the hero and then that banter happens, it's kind of like they're using their voice to say, I'm not going to be stuck in my position or what society expects of me. So I think that's why you're seeing it a lot in historical romance now. And I love it too. I love the banter all day, every day. And banter leading to hot, spicy times, even better.
That, yes. Cosign.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost like a convention in historical romance that if you have, like, you're gonna have a sassy heroine, and by sass I mean someone that, because like that's part of like the arc, especially because then and you have these dukes and you have these earls, these men with all this power, and you have these women who are completely unfazed by it, right? So like part of like that I think part of like the modern historical romance is the expectation that she's just gonna keep him like a deer in headlights the entire time. Like, what is this thing that just keeps just like shooting back like all this sass at me? Like, I mean, I think to me, like that's like some of like my favorite thing about historical. And I must say for me, like the banter, like I'm drafting right now. I'm in the first draft and there's no banter. These people are just like wah wah wah. Like the banter for me usually happens more like the revision. That's when like things start to sparkle a little.
I'm the opposite. I write scripts, just screenplays. It's just banter, 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 banter. And then it's like, so were they doing anything while that was going on?
Just floating heads
A
talking.
plot.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I see some questions coming in the chat. If you all are able to pop those questions in the Q&A, that will help me as I filter through. I have about maybe three more questions. We'll see. Okay, so what tropes do either you really enjoy writing or you find work really well in historical romance? Other than marriage of convenience, maybe.
Enemies to lovers.
Enemies to lovers, definitely.
Enemies to lovers. It's the most fun because of the banter and because of like it just gives you so much tension to work with. And I feel like it's the most fun way for your heroine to express herself, because when you hate someone passionately, you get to be kind of wild about why you hate that person. Like sometimes hating a person, especially if they haven't done anything like super malicious, is kind of crazy, because you're just, especially in historical contexts, it's just like, oh, this person like rejected me in this way or said something. And I think that is just really fun for the reader and fun for the writer to continue writing. I don't know if that's for just me, but I feel like that's the best one.
Add in forced proximity and just one bed, and you're like, your book's like exploding.
Yeah, true.
That was the wrong word.
Proximity, that's a good one. I like fish out of water. I like putting them in situations where they have absolutely no idea what's going on or what to do, and then they're just forced to roll with it. That can lead a lot of fun.
I love a revenge plot. Speaking about like Queen Bee, I love like just like I am here to destroy your life, and then like actually I'm here to love you forever. Like I love that. Like specifically, like I'm here to seek revenge is one that I love, and a historical kind of like really lends itself to it. So that's, and I love like fated mates. Like insta love is like one of my favorite things. Like
Same.
One person is supremely annoyed, like the grumpy sunshine, and then there's one person that's just like simping and like obsessed. That's like my favorite thing.
Catnip.
I like that one too, because it's like enemies to lovers, but heightened. Like, yeah, on steroids. Only time I feel like you can do steroids when enemies to lovers trope, like you just make it even more. Okay, so Erica, I do have a question, and this could be for the panel too. What are your approaches to villainy? Because I'll say that this villain, I was like, dang, this dude is just, I mean, he's savage. Like he just means what he means. He's just out here ruining lives and owning it. And so, you know, in some books, obviously the thing that the characters are facing is you know, more of a situation as opposed to a person. But in this one, I felt like it was largely this guy. And of course, their feelings about themselves. But yeah, what was your approach to villainy with this book? And, you know, for the other authors in general, what is your approach to villainy?
So, in this series, not maybe not every book, but most of them have like a specific villain, like what you're saying, and I try to make it a little bit different each time. So, like they're not necessarily, you know, like a big bad type person, but in this case, I had a lot of fun with that, where I got to make this underworld crime boss, and he was just like, yeah, this is how I make my money. Like, don't worry. So
it was like, widows are out here destitute. Yeah. He was like, yeah, give me that anyway. Like what?
So yeah, it was a lot of fun to have someone who's just unapologetically bad.
Did you all see her face when you asked that question? I was watching you. She did the smile. It was just like classic. I feel like for heroes, if it's a villainy, like, you know, that morally gray, I love that. Oh my gosh. And JJ does that very well. I'm just gonna say. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop fangirling for that series. But and then if you're writing like villains that, you know, that the antagonist, you know, the bad person in the story, I feel like at some point you don't really need to work to make them redeemable, because they're not, you know, you don't want them to be cartoonish, right? You want them to be a fully fledged character with their own goals and objectives and all this stuff. But you can do so many bad things like you did, Erica, with your guy. That's like, I don't care. I just want money, you know?
I'm going to lock you in the dungeon. Sorry.
I think when it comes to villains, especially in like, in any sort, anytime you're writing a villain, I feel like they are just as important as your hero. And I feel like they deserve as much backstory. Even if you're not writing all of it into your book, you should know their backstory well and know why they are the way. Like there for some of my books where the villain you don't ever know why they are the way they are. I know why they are. And that motivates me to like be free on why they are acting that way, because I don't feel like I need to explain, and therefore they don't need to explain. But I really do. And I really like this generation of like readers like that are enjoying more villains.
Yeah.
I think maybe it might be a pushback because of all the superheroes that we've been reading or seeing for the last decade, but I really enjoy the fact that people like these just unapologetic jerks. And it's like it's part funny, it's part like just the surprise and the suspense and the shocking of it. But I really do love a well-crafted villain because they can determine the rest of the book just as much as a heroine can or a hero can. And I really feel like authors that pay attention to crafting and being dedicated to not redeeming their heroes either, to allowing them to be, I mean, their villains, allowing them to be the villain, I think that's really important. And I really feel like most of the authors here do a good job with that. So, yeah.
It's like that touch her on die vibes. I don't know why that is. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. My hero is always the patriarch. My villain is always the patriarchy. That's my number one villain. That's the guy I fight every day. I mean, I can put like a person that represents the patriarchy as a villain, but I'm basically just trying to like demolish the patriarchy in every book. That's my second favorite day next to Sex Scene Day.
Keeping it simple. I love it. Okay, so at this point, we're going to transition to some audience questions from Austin Ria. Who are some of the historical romance authors you feel in conversation with, either as someone you look up to or someone whose work you're seeking to counter / expand on? Anyone, feel free to jump in. My middle school teacher heart is not going to let y'all get away with it.
I mean, I get like a historical romance that I like think about all the time, and that I'm like trying to achieve like 100th of what that book I think does is Lord of Scoundrels. I think about that book maybe once a day in like different contexts, and think about Jessica Trent and her mantilla multiple times a week. Because I think to me, that is a book that I read and I was like, wow, this is a perfect book. Or like for the genre, right? Like not perhaps the most perfect book ever, although it could be. It's like that's one of those books that I try it really influences the way that I craft like a hero, a heroine, like speaking to like backstory, and the way like Loretta Chase like created the backstory for Jane is like probably one of the most brilliant like backstories that I've read. So yeah, that's probably one of those books that I go to again and again and think about a lot.
Probably my oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say probably my formative historical romances when I first got into it would be like old school Julie Garwood's, and so that would be like a vibe, right? Like banter, shenanigans, just pure fun. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, I haven't gone back and reread those books in years and years. But I remember how I felt when I read them, and that would be like the kind of vibe I would be trying to do today.
Yes. Yeah, that's the same for me. Like Judith McNaught, Julie Garwood, Jude Devereaux, Joanna Lindsay. I call them the Jays, and Beverly Jenkins. Like literally, and Beverly Jenkins. Like, and Beverly, like I wanna be her when I grow up, man. Like that woman is like, she's just a queen, and her work is incredible, and she's just a really, really awesome person. I've gotten to know her a little bit, and she's just phenomenal. So I'd like to have a career like that where I look back and I'm just like unapologetically writing what I want and what I love. And yeah, she's like a national treasure.
She really is. And she was going to be my, what I was going to say is, I feel like I want to, if it was two paths converging, it would want to be somewhere between Jane Austen and Beverly Jenkins. And I just kind of want to like merge them together and be that person. And so I feel like, I think we call her Miss Bev, but I feel like I learned so much from reading all of her books, and just I think she was the first time I actually started to see women of color
Mm-hmm.
um in that time period. And it was the first time, and when you see it happening, and she's done it for so long, for so many years with so many different imprints, and it's just like to see her continuously bring this voice into this space gives you confidence that you're able to do it as well. And then Jane Austen, in the sense that it's just, I always feel like it's cliche, but I feel like it's cliche because we all know it so well. And because we've all like read it so well. And I just remember the first time when I was like 13 or 14, how excited that book made, how excited Pride and Prejudice made me feel when I first read it. So I remember just being like wanting more after that, like wanting it to the, I was just like, can I just get like an epilogue, an extended epilogue? Like I wanted it to keep going. And I realized I wanted to write stories in which people were like, I want you to keep writing this family, these couple into generations. And I think that's basically where I get my inspiration, somewhere between, going back between both of those.
Awesome. Okay, another question from the audience. Hi, when writing, do you create a music playlist for each character? And what is one song? Oh, wait, they moved. Oh, what is one song that best captures the world of your story? From Chichi Anua. Hope I said that right. We'll start with you, Erica, for your book.
I actually don't create a playlist. I get very distracted, and when I put music on and try to write, I'm totally listening to music and not writing then. So I have just the anti. There is a band on Spotify that is silent. So I guess I would have to pick
Silly
them. They
man.
just have nothing.
Yeah, same. I can't have any noise when I'm writing. Like I can do like sometimes I'll do a playlist like just like for a vibe if I'm like
Vibes.
walking and trying like when I'm in those moments where like I need like inspiration, like I'll usually like sometimes I go to music, but honestly, most of the times I'll do audios of books that I really love that like really capture like the feel of what I'm trying to do, and that is more helpful to me. But like I'll do a playlist sometimes, but I'm not like I have a song for each chapter. No, I don't. I'm not really. I can't list like no, sound is no good for me when I'm writing.
I create playlists for every book that I write. So the other side of that. And I think sometimes when you're writing within different genres, whether you're writing sci-fi or fantasy or historical, if you're working on multiple projects, if I put on the playlist, it automatically pops my brain into that world. So it's been like a switch for me. So it actually works that way. Sometimes when people say if you get stuck when you're writing on a computer, switch to longhand and something in your brain kind of moves or whatever. I think for like the song pick, I'd pick a band. I'd pick two cellos because they're phenomenal. They like do like covers of like rock songs and stuff, and the cellos are just incredible. So yeah, I would choose them. But I have like a lot. I mean, I was looking at it. This is I get my iPhone. This is like my song list for like the last historical I wrote, and so yeah. Okay, never mind. There's the weekend in there. I don't know how he ended up in there, but
Oh, the weekend.
Um,
Another question. Oh, sorry.
oh,
Go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
I was just gonna say I agree 100%. I have a song for every chapter. I'm one of those people. And I think I didn't really think about it in the sense of like maybe my brain needed to switch the tone of the book. So like because I write in different subgenres within romance. So like I didn't, when I started writing historical romance, I found I didn't want words, I wanted instrumentals. And so I would almost like whenever I would do a ballroom scene or like a meeting, I was just having kind of like walking through an estate in London, like I'm in watching a movie and I'm hearing the background music play. So I definitely have like I have like a whole DeBelle playlist on Spotify that I
I
just
love
like,
it.
yeah, so like I just like listen to those songs as I'm going through the chapters, and like I add songs when I hear it somewhere else, but it definitely influences like the whole tone of the book for me because it makes me really feel it like it's almost like it's a background to whatever scene is happening. And I think like some people like can't have any, but if I sit in absolute silence, I think my mind starts to get a little bit like irritated. Like I'm just like, what's like something needs to be happening. So that I feel like that helps me. So like for most of my books, I think I used to do this early. I used to share the soundtracks or the musics that would influence those books. Like earlier before YouTube would strike you down for those. But I definitely would share those a lot because I feel like you could guess kind of what chapter it was on by following the music.
I mean, as a reader, I love when an author is just, even if it's just for vibes, like I love a little playlist to go along. So, but I do view that to being different to your writing process and what you're doing as you're writing. So, yeah, externally, I'm here for it, but I get it. I would rather another book. So, respect.
As a reader, I agree with you because I've discovered so much amazing music just from looking at, either vibe playlists or actual playlists. Like I love music, so it's totally awesome.
Right. Or I might not have even thought of that. And I'm like, oh, okay, okay, okay. I see that. I see that. So, yeah, I think we'll do maybe two more audience questions. One that I saw that was in the chat that I thought was interesting was, do you find research or history is more detailed or deeper in any particular country that you've looked at?
British history is very deep, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but um yeah, I do find, I mean, French history is also very well, but it's like it's hard to find a good translation for stuff that you want to look at. I think that's something you have to, I feel like I'm limited by my lack of knowledge of languages to like look around to see exactly how much is out there. But so I might just be biased because I can read in English. But I do feel like between England and France, I can find a lot of stuff. And only when if you go to the Far East and go to like China, you can definitely find a lot. But outside of that, I can't really see where else I would get, but I feel like you would have to be dedicated to writing in that country in that time period to really research it. So I feel like it just depends on where your setting is, and then maybe you'll be able to access more history for that.
Yeah, I feel like that's a complicated question because I
Mhm.
think the history that's accessible to us has always been the history of like the colonizers. So like there's more depth because they got to like there's so much more there because they got to
History
write
is
it,
written by the
right?
victors. Yeah, totally.
Right. So I mean, the history that I'm mostly interested in is obviously like Dominican history or like connections to other countries from like, but like through the lens of like a Dominican historical figure or a character. So that's what I mostly focus on. But like in the process of writing these books, I can like read and write in like in Spanish is my first language, so I can read and write in Spanish, and I can read and write in French as well. So that really has like helped me, which was like why I intentionally set those books in Paris because I knew that I could like read archives and things like that. But I don't know, like the more I like learn about like just my little island and like the history of like the Caribbean as like a very important geopolitical place in the world through history, like the more I become like elated that we are like so amazing and also frustrated of just how little like I even know about the history of like my place, like where I come from. So yeah, it's a
And I just
complicated question.
I think I just wanted to add on that. I think we need to also acknowledge how much history was like lost, not lost, but like destroyed, and stripped away from people and not being able to easily share. So I think that what you're saying is right. I just feel like and a lot of us learning this history, it's not like we grew up with, like I didn't grow up with a lot of history outside of like other country in like a lot of other countries. It was only as I got older and as I was writing did I learn to explore other countries' histories. And it's so cool that you know both languages and you can do research in there. I will probably message you for help.
Please do.
Yeah, to both of you, those points, like, I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. The study on history that we did were specific to the Caribbean. So, I mean, and our history, as Adriana said, is very rich. And when you learn that, you're taught that in schools, that's part of, philosophical, economic, sociopolitical discussions. Like that's what you learn. And then when I came to the United States at 17 to go to school, and I also lived in France. I'm bilingual, French and English. I went to school there too. So I love France. Great city.
I love all the author flexes right now. Love it.
Flex it.
Yeah,
Although
flex.
she speaks Spanish fluently, I don't have that. I could yeah, get along maybe. Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of things that were different. A lot of perspectives were very different. And I think that's the beauty about, when authors write their notes in the back, like even with Adriana's books and reading about how she came across all her research, fascinating. So, and you learn more, the more you read and the more you read about different cultures. And we have so many, Diana Quincy writes about, Arabic cultures. I love reading historicals with those slants, with different, countries, different backgrounds, different languages, because the world is a really big place.
And I live in Costa Rica. So yes, also multiple languages here. And the history that you learn in Costa Rica is different than the history that you learn in the United States. And so even for like the same time periods or whatever, like there's historical figures that are super known in Costa Rica that the average person in the US has never heard of, even though it was a US person, or, and vice versa, and that kind of thing. So definitely each country has its own stories that if you are limited to just the lens of wherever, just Britain's view of what was going on there, or just the US's view, then you can miss out on a lot of detail.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Listening to you all speak, I'm thinking of historical romances also as an educative tool, and this is fascinating. I'm going to keep pondering that. That's a little nugget. Okay, well, we are running up on time, and it's unfortunate. I'm looking at all these wonderful questions, but one question for you, Erica, is people want to know who's coming next. I don't know if you can share that, and maybe you can't, but
I think I can. I will. So the next book is Elizabeth's book. So it is full of swashbuckling goodness, and it'll be out next summer.
Very exciting. So very exciting. Okay, and so one question that also got upvoted is any advice to the new historical romance writing girlies?
Keep going no matter what anyone says about your book. I think a lot of times there's a lot of gatekeeping, and there's a lot of people that have a very limited view of what they decide historical romances are, and what they should be, and what should be allowed, and what they shouldn't. And I feel if you listen to all of them, you will never finish writing your book. So I really think that probably one of the biggest things is to write something you want to read, and then also be true to that, and not really let other people's opinions on that shift you and take away from what you want to write. So whether you're writing about the Caribbean, whether you're writing about like Spain, wherever it is you're going, and whatever story you're trying to tell, whatever your color, your character is, whatever their beliefs, their love interests, I think so many people have been proven wrong when they say, oh, this won't sell or this won't be good, that it should give you hope and strength to keep doing what you want to do. I really believe that an author should write something that they love to read.
I would also caution you will never know everything. It is an impossible thing. So if you are hesitating to write because you just think you have to research for a little more and understand a little more, and at some point you just have to write the draft, because no matter how much you know, I promise you're going to have to look up stuff anyway as you're writing the book. Like there will never be a day when there's a book that you never Google something. So don't get in your own way with that as well. Like don't be afraid to just get in there. You can always edit. You can always, make things better. But get started. Yeah, go for it.
Just to add to Erica's, it's like you can always edit a bad page, but you can't edit a blank page. And that's Jodi Picoult. She's just awesome. Anyway, I'll just pretend that her words are mine. And I would also add that, especially if you're from a marginalized group, your voice is important. We need more stories. And the only way we can get more stories is if you write them and people buy them and uplifts, everyone, all voices.
Yes, don't rely on what historical romance portrays that what history is, because historical romance is a very small sliver of world history. So whatever it is that you have in there that you're interested in, just like dig in and write it.
Oh man, we just want to keep getting all the advice from you wonderful people. But unfortunately, time is of the essence, and I cannot let us leave here today without a fun game. I mean, I'm calling it fun, but I hope you think so too. So first of all, I want to say shout out to my colleague who's put in the chat that our events are possible through book sales and authors supporting authors. So you have four wonderful authors here. Erica Ridley's new book just came out. Support Erica Ridley. Support Adriana Herrera. Support JJ McAvoy. Support Amalie Howard. Okay. I'm sure my colleague will put some links in the chat so you can check out their books. I can vouch for all four of these authors and say you will not be disappointed. So yeah, just make sure to check that out in the chat. I'm sure Emma will get that going. All right, so very quickly, we're gonna do a word association game. So I'm gonna give you a word or an adjective that starts with R because of course Erica's book has a lot of R's in the title. And you are going to tell me either a character from her book, her most recent book, or if you want to say a character from your book that you think that adjective applies to, or if you just want to mix it up and throw something else in there, I'm here for it. Why not? Let's have fun with it. And we're just gonna kind of lightning round, and if you could just tell us if it's not Erica's latest book, if you could just tell us what book it's from, that would be great too, so that people can know to check it out. All right, first word is rakish.
Okay, so if it's me, Lord Adrian, hero of my Road to Ruin.
Yes.
Yeah, I also say him. Let's celebrate Erica. Rakish, he wants to ruin you, heroine. Run away.
Rakish. I will say from Las Leonas, because I'm writing that book now and half of my brain is Apollo Sinclair Robles.
Way to tease.
I couldn't hear. Are we supposed to name a character or name a person?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's rakish. The last, I mean, I guess I don't want to say my book, but I feel like I forgot the name of the main character, even though it's quite famous right now. It's Julia Quinn's book. What's his name? From the second book.
Anthony?
Yes. Yes.
Anthony.
Yes. That's who I would say. That came from my mind.
And if I had to pick from my book, I'd say Winter from the Rake Hell of Roth, because rakish goes with Rake Hell.
Oh. I like that. Okay, rational.
Rational.
That's hard.
I know.
Who writes rational characters? Not me.
You always need one.
I'm gonna say I have a rational one for my Rogue to Ruin. It is Tickletums the Hedgehog. He is after the food. He's a simple, rational creature.
I would say Heather Dubell in my next book that's gonna come out next year. She's very rational but crazy.
Well, I have a rational former, I mean not former, it's an older book of Erica's. From Perks of Living a Wildflower, the Blue Stocking.
Philippa.
Philippa, yes. That
Oh,
is
that's a good
a
one.
very even-keeled woman until she encounters her deliciously is it Thomasina?
Tommy.
Yeah,
Oh, my
Tommy.
Who is
favorite.
also rakish.
It
Yes.
is. Yes.
Yes. We love a lady rake.
Yeah.
I love a rake ass. Yes.
You just won that. Both rakish and rational. That book.
Thank you, backlist.
Mm-hmm.
Then I guess the last word we should end on is radiant, because that's what Adriana was in that moment.
Hmm.
If you ask me why I picked these words, it's because they begin with R.
Yes.
Oh,
I will say maybe Manuela from Island Princess. She glows, whether with radiance or with mischief.
And I will say Marjorie. She definitely sees the world differently than everyone else and really lives through the vibrancy of her perspective.
And I will say Lady Vesper from my Never Met a Duke Like You, because she is like the ultimate matchmaker. She's like society's darling. She is very radiant, but she's also, radiance can be caused by something very like feisty on the inside also. So when you peel back her layers, you get some of that as opposed to the polished radiance.
I'd say I think Lady Ella is that from Queen Bee. I think
What?
yeah, I feel
Thank
like
you.
she and when I that was the first person that came to my mind. I feel like that would be the one I feel like is a radiant character.
Thank you. Ooh.
Mm.
Well, that was so much fun. I had fun. I hope you did too. And I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate Erica's new book. And thank you, audience, for showing up. We've had a great time listening to all of you authors discuss. So I hope you guys have a great evening, and we will see you soon, hopefully, somewhere in the cyberverse. Thank
Ooh.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
ECD. Congrats, Erica.
Congrats,
Thank you.
Erica.